The story begins with a world that has been split into two by a great conflict, known as the War of the Immortals, between two opposing forces, the mortals, who have a limited lifespan, and the immortals, who are free from death. This war grew fiercer and culminated in a decisive battle between two key figures. On one side was Graham, the hero wielding the sacred X-Sword of Meldia, and on the other was the Demon King, Biltol Velfet Velsvolt, leader of the Immortals. In the year 1599 of the Continental Era, on the 12th day of the Dragon Month, the final battle between Graham and Biltol occurred. Despite the Demon King's overwhelming power, Graham managed to defeat him. As Biltol lay defeated, he expressed confusion, questioning how a mortal could defeat him despite his superior strength, power, and careful planning. Graham explained that while humans may appear weak due to their short lives, it is their very mortality that drives them to grow stronger and survive. The Demon King interrupted, dismissing Graham's explanation as nonsense, but Graham stood firm, attributing his victory to the resilience and spark of life that humans possess. Biltol, however, ominously declared that just as light exists, so too does darkness, and he would rise again in the face of light, claiming to be undefeated. Graham accepted this, saying he would face the darkness whenever it returned. After bidding farewell, Biltol disappeared and Graham returned home, believing his eternal enemy was vanquished. The scene then shifts to Biltol waking up in a new era with a girl named Machina Solage beside him. She introduces herself as one of the 6 pillars of Dark Companions, specifically the Duchess of Blazing Flames. She reveals that she had been waiting for his rebirth for a year and had overseen the ritual that ensured his reincarnation. Biltol, curious about his surroundings, learns from Machina that they are underground in the Cathedral of Demas Neldor, beneath the former Shinjuku station. However, the world Biltol knew had drastically changed. Around 80 years prior, an event called Phantasian caused the worlds of humanity and Alaneth to merge, leading to widespread devastation. In the first 3 years, 90% of the population perished, governments collapsed, and cities became independent states. 2 major wars erupted between these cities, but the world was finally beginning to heal. Machina explained that technological advancements from Earth's industrial civilization and the magical technology of Alaneth merged after the Phantasian event. Now, in the year 2099, the world had changed beyond recognition. Biltol, shocked by this new reality, marveled at how much mortal civilization had advanced, particularly their ability to detect everything with advanced radars. He attempted to demonstrate his power by casting magic, but the city's warning systems detected it, and Machina quickly informed him that magic use was prohibited, urging him to leave before they were discovered. As they prepared to escape, Biltol noticed the presence of someone familiar but didn't give it much thought. So Machina then explained that after Biltol's death, a ceasefire had been agreed upon between the immortals and mortals. However, after the chaos of Phantasian, the great mortal kingdom fell apart, and immortals were hunted by the major industrial powers, who viewed them as dangerous creatures. Anti-immortal weapons were created, nearly wiping out the immortal population. Biltol inquired about the fate of the 6 pillars of darkness. Machina revealed that the whereabouts of some, such as Maya of the Sorrowful Heights and Rassilon the Blue Storm, were unknown, while Zenil, the Sword of Doom, had sacrificed himself to ensure their escape. Biltol praised Zenil's loyalty but shifted the conversation to another subject, which made Machina visibly nervous. She then tried to change the topic, mentioning that the air in the city was polluted, and offered to buy some of his throat. As she left, Biltol sensed something unusual about her, which caused advertisements to change. When he confronted her about it, she initially feigned ignorance, but eventually revealed that she hacked into the city's holographic display system using etheric magic. She downplayed her actions as a simple hack and assured him that she hadn't done anything too impressive. Despite her innocent appearance, Machina was skilled in dangerous tasks and was accustomed to facing life-threatening situations. Eam is very strict about network systems and content filtering, which makes them her enemy, as she believes the internet should be a place of true freedom. What she did was more of a rebellion against this corrupt society. She is a brilliant hacker and a rebellious spirit, using her talents to fight against this oppressive system. Biltol then tells her that he is searching for a man named Marcus. If she had kept quiet about the name earlier, she now points to a building and informs him that Marcus, the CEO of Heavy Magic Industries, Ishimaru, can be found there. Biltol goes to the building and enters the company. At the receptionist asks him to state his business, but he doesn't respond. Instead, he asks her to inform Marcus of his presence, assuring her that Marcus will understand when she mentions the name Viltol. At that moment, Marcus's personal secretary, Kinwahara, approaches and introduces herself before leading Viltol to Marcus's office. On their way, Viltol notices something resembling a small bear hanging from Kinwahara's shirt, almost like a keychain. When he asks about it, she explains that it's the beloved mascot of Magic Industries, Ishimaru, and they are planning to build a movement around it in the near future because it's a truly unique creature. When Viltol finally meets Marcus, Marcus welcomes him and remarks that it has been a long time since their last encounter. He asks what brings Viltol here. Enraged, Viltol accuses Marcus of celebrating his defeat by Reki, but Marcus dismisses this, telling him to forget about it. Viltol then demands Marcus's help in rebuilding the Immortal Kingdom and dominating the world again. Marcus laughs mockingly and refuses, which enrages Viltol. Viltol attempts to strike Marcus, but Kinwahara intervenes, wounding him with her sword. However, Marcus orders her to step back and then addresses Viltol, pointing out how weak he has become. He notes that such a wound would have healed instantly in the past without shedding a drop of blood. Marcus mocks Viltol further, questioning how he expects to conquer the world when the fear and reverence he once commanded have disappeared. Marcus continues to taunt Viltol, refusing to bow to someone as weak as him. He tells Viltol to leave unless he begs, at which point he might reconsider. Furious, Viltol declares that Marcus cannot defeat him. He prepares to attack, but Marcus quickly uses spell-breaking magic and laughs, saying Viltol is 2 steps too slow. Viltol then notices a small device attached to Marcus's back, and a screen appears. Marcus introduces the device as the Familia Magical Device, a cutting-edge creation of humanity's ingenuity in magical engineering. He explains that while casting magic usually requires 5 steps preparation, construction, expansion, the spell itself, and declaration of Familia allows users to skip the middle steps. Those implanted with Familia can activate magic with just a declaration. Marcus explains that the device allows people of all races and ages to use magic without incantations or spellcasting, making dreams a reality. However, he notes that Familia is incompatible with spiritually superior beings like Viltol, meaning he cannot use it. Implanting Familia in Viltol would strip him of his advantage. While Viltol's ability to process magic is impressive, Familia is much faster and has become essential in this modern world. Marcus reveals that he never liked Viltol from the start, admitting that he always resented Viltol's arrogance and superiority. He tells Viltol that he has served him out of hate for far too long. Shocked, Viltol asks if he has been blind all this time, and Marcus confirms it. Marcus then uses his magical sword to throw Viltol out of the building. Afterward, Marcus tells his assistant that now that the illusion of the former Demon King is gone, he will become the true Demon King. The assistant asks to discuss the marketing plan for Ishimaru, and Marcus replies that the ideas should be submitted at the next planning meeting. Outside, Viltol, badly beaten, wonders why he lost. A passerby mocks him, asking if he's cursing him after their collision. Viltol lies on the ground, stunned and weak. Machina rushes to him, crying, and pleads for him to cry with her. Viltol, saddened by how weak he has become, tells her that even if she had warned him about Marcus's betrayal earlier, he would have still confronted Marcus to confirm it for himself. They make their way to Machina's home, and Viltol praises her for securing a fortress-like shelter in this era. As they enter, Machina apologizes for the small size of her home, explaining that her salary is low. Viltol, moved by her loyalty, tells her that her faithfulness has left a deep impression on him. Overwhelmed, Machina bursts into tears, saying that his praise is more than she deserves. We then see that Machina is standing at the edge of the volcano as a crowd gathers around her, accusing her of being a demon and blaming her for the disaster that had befallen them. They shouted that she must be cast into hell and began throwing stones at her. However, her wounds healed instantly, as if nothing had happened. One man decided to push her into the volcano. He struck her with his staff, and she fell into the abyss. Just as she was falling, the Demon King appeared and saved her, pulling her back to safety. The crowd was terrified as they witnessed this. The Demon King looked at Machina and saw that she was a beautiful girl. He decided to invite her to join him and extended his hand. Machina agreed, and as she reached out to take his hand, she suddenly woke up from her dream. Realizing it was just a dream, she looked beside her and saw that the Demon King was still asleep. She then headed to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. After some time, she called upon Eleklit, informing her that it was the 13th day of the month of the dragon, in the age of integration 299, and the time was 6:03 am. The weather was mild and warm. After about half an hour, Makina finished preparing breakfast and called out to Veltol, the Demon King. Surprised, he remarked that he had never seen such breakfast before and that it smelled wonderful. When he tried it, he was amazed by the taste, which made Makina very happy. After they finished eating and drank some tea, Walter asked her about the immortals. Makina explained that while there was no true immortal besides God, she knew others had survived the immortal hunt, just as she had. However, they had recently disappeared, and her closest eyes had lost contact with them. She hoped they were in a safe place. Veltol reassured her that the immortal hunt had ceased decades ago. It had been started to secure Marcus' position, and there was no reason for it to be revived. Makina then went to her aide's chambers after losing contact and found evidence of a battle inside. The only message left behind was a single phrase, "Friend Khalid." Upon hearing this, Veltol became tense and spilled his tea, but assured her that he was fine, even though some of his wounds from the previous day were still visible. He admitted that his strength had waned and that the power he had once possessed could clear the skies over the entire city if he were at full strength. However, he knew that it would take time to regain his powers, and he would need special training to recover fully. He asked Makina to accompany him on this journey, encouraging him so that he could complete his work perfectly. Using his powers, Veltol returned the spilled tea to the cup and commented that staying at home all day would only make him weaker. Makina suggested they go on a short shopping trip, and the Demon King agreed. They went into the city streets where the first task was to find new clothing for him. As they entered a clothing store, Veltol was astonished by the technology. Makina explained that they would perform a 3D socks beat, custom, highest and the highest quality. Veltol, confident in his physique, joked that he didn't need clothes to look good, saying he could walk around naked and people would admire his strong muscles. Makina quickly dismissed the idea, saying people would scold him and he would attract too much attention. She then asked if he had any preferences for color or style. Veltol left the choice up to her. Now, with the help of a store assistant, Makina selected practical and adaptable clothes that met all his criteria. Veltol was very happy with the design, calling it simple yet well-crafted. He noticed a symbol on the clothes and asked if it was a logo. So Makina explained that it was an ancient form of writing from a long-lost empire that once ruled the land. After securing his new clothes, they continued on their errands. Veltol was surprised that Makina hadn't offered any currency for the clothes. She explained that she had made an automatic digital payment, though Walter didn't fully understand the concept but went along with it. Now later they sat at a restaurant to enjoy a meal together. As they ate, Veltol asked Makina about the concept of familia. He was curious about it, especially after the rebellion led by Marcus. Makina explained that familia was a convenient and comfortable system used primarily for magic, but it also had other practical uses like gathering information, shopping, and communicating without the need to carry a physical device. Veltol asked Makina if he could touch the device implanted on her back, which made her blush. He also asked if it was uncomfortable to have the device attached to the back of her neck. Makina replied that it felt strange at first, but she eventually got used to it. Now, she found it difficult to live without the device. However, she added that owning one did not necessarily improve someone's life. After leaving the restaurant, Veltol told Makina that he wanted to find a job. This surprised Makina because she believed he didn't need to work. She had planned to support them both and was even willing to take on more jobs if necessary. Veltol, however, explained that times had changed. He couldn't let her do everything and felt it was time for him to contribute. He expressed that he hadn't given up the idea of conquering the world but was ready to find a job in the meantime. Makina agreed to his decision and asked if she could accompany him during his job search. Veltol declined, explaining that if he failed to find a job, he would rely on her income. Makina understood and handed him a device with a small amount of money, telling him that he could use it if he got hungry or if he needed to contact her. The device also had a tracker and an alarm function for emergencies. Veltol took the device and sat by the roadside, unsure of how to find a job. Eventually, he came across a small food stand and realized he was starving. He stood up and loudly announced that he was looking for work. A man approached and suggested that Veltol go to the trade guild if he had a citizen's ID. So when Veltol admitted he didn't have one, the man handed him a resume template and told him to take it to the guild. He also warned Veltol to avoid companies under the name. Veltol thanked the man and went to the trade guild. Once there, the guild employee reviewed his resume and asked about a skill called Dela. Veltol explained that Dela was capable of annihilating enemy forces on a wide scale. The employee also reported Veltol's military leadership experience, to which Veltol proudly confirmed his expertise in leading armies. He mentioned his accomplishments, including building the Fortress Damus and ruling a nation for 1,000 years. The employee pointed out that his last position was over 500 years ago, but Veltol explained that, from his perspective, no time had passed. Despite his impressive history, the guild declined to offer him a job, citing his lack of a familia. Disappointed, Veltol returned to Makina and asked her to check if something was wrong. He confessed that he was starting to lose confidence in his ability to adapt to this era. Makina reassured him, telling him that mortals were too foolish to understand his greatness and that he should not feel discouraged. Veltol, however, insisted that he needed advice and asked if Makina had any friends in this era. Makina said she had a friend she could call for help. She contacted her friend Takashi and arranged to meet her at a nearby cafe. When Takashi arrived, she greeted them and apologized for being late. It turned out that Veltol already knew her, and Takashi revealed that he had once tried to flirt with her. Veltol was surprised and asked how they had become friends. Takashi explained that she and Makina had first met on an Odom site related to matters concerning the Demon Lord. They also interacted in a creative fantasy role-playing chat room. Veltol noted that Takashi's familia was different from Makina's and mentioned that he had been trying to figure out how it was created. Makina explained that Veltol used his ability Ruler's Eyes to analyze the mana flow and understand the composition of things. Takashi then told Veltol that she had noticed he detected her programming hack. Veltol admitted that he had a general understanding of what was happening inside the familia, but there was still much he couldn't fully analyze. Makina urged Veltol to get to the point, and they asked Takashi for advice on finding Veltol a job. Veltol explained that he had been rejected by the guild because he lacked a familia and asked if Takashi had any ideas. After thinking it over, Takashi came up with a plan. The next scene shows Veltol hosting a YouTube show. Our episode begins with the Demon King, Vilto, watching television, completely captivated as it's his first time experiencing it. Takahashi explains to him that he's watching a live broadcast where people stream themselves playing video games, chatting, singing, and doing various activities to earn money through ads and viewer donations. Once they become popular, these streamers even start receiving real job offers. Vilto asks if it's something he could try, despite not fully grasping it, and Takahashi reassures him that it's quite simple. He offers Vilto his own, albeit slightly outdated, equipment, saying that once Vilto starts making money, he can upgrade to more modern gear. Makina, however, is against the idea, voicing her concerns that streaming is an uncertain and risky career path, especially since the channel could be shut down overnight. Takahashi counters her argument by highlighting Vilto's great personality and beautiful voice, which he believes would make him popular very quickly. Makina considers this and asks Vilto for his opinion. After a moment of silence, Vilto agrees to give it a try. The scene shifts to their home, where Vilto speaks to Makina about the Ethernet network, explaining how it allows people to share their opinions freely and quickly, which is entirely different from what he remembers. However, with such a fast-paced flow of information, it becomes nearly impossible for people to distinguish truth from falsehood. This tendency leads them toward a collective consciousness where individuality is lost under the guise of freedom. He warns that their shared awareness is often tainted with laziness and malice, ultimately pulling them down. Vilto hints that, in this environment, he could potentially guide the world to his advantage. When he looks at Makina, though, he finds her sipping juice and not paying attention. She apologizes and assures him she's deeply sorry. Vilto tells her to stand up, saying that such behavior doesn't suit her. Grateful, she thanks him, mentioning how she's been alone for so long and his presence is now a great comfort. Later, Takahashi arrives with the streaming equipment, delivering it via drones and assuring them it should be sufficient to get started. Makina, however, is still unsure and questions how live streaming could even generate money. Takahashi reassures her, saying, "You have to trust me more, Makina. We've been friends since childhood. Come on, Vilto, let's give it a try." Vilto powers up the computer, grabs the controller, and chooses a game, but he immediately loses in the first round. Laughing, he admits it's harder than it looks, yet he persists, retrying the challenging game only to keep losing. Makina tells him his chances of success look slim if he keeps losing like this. Takahashi, however, sees potential in Vilto's struggles, saying they could be endearing, especially given Vilto's good looks and charismatic voice. He adds that Vilto's gaming skills will improve over time. Makina reminds them not to take the streaming lightly, noting that around 5 million streamers exist globally. yet less than 1% make a comfortable living. They brainstorm an introduction for Vilto's stream, and Makina suggests he start with one of his wartime statements. Vilto gives it a try, saying, "Foolish visitors, tremble and await my presence. I am the Demon King of Nations, and I will grant you the greatest moment in your limited lives as I unleash the chaos of war." Makina applauds his dramatic delivery, while Takahashi agrees they're on the right track, though he suggests making it a bit more entertaining. Takahashi teaches Vilto the basics of streaming, explaining that consistent daily streaming will help the channel grow faster. He advises Vilto to keep talking, even if no one is watching, focusing on discussing the game's content rather than staying silent. He also warns against any sexual or discriminatory behavior, as it could lead to negative consequences, potentially even a ban. Additionally, Takahashi advises Makina to avoid making any loud sounds during the stream. Promising to promote the channel himself, Takahashi commits to covering all the initial costs. Vilto launches his streaming channel, and his subscriber count starts to rise. However, viewers criticize and insult him for his poor gaming skills, calling him an idiot and questioning which era he comes from. Some even block him, but Vilto ignores the negativity, acting as if it doesn't bother him. His subscriber count continues to grow regardless. Day by day, Vilto improves his gaming skills and learns more about streaming. Makina feels sad to see him treated so poorly by viewers, but Vilto reassures her, saying, "I've gotten used to it, my dear. And I know nothing comes easy. This is only the beginning." Within a few days, or perhaps 10, Vilto's subscribers reach 1 million. Excitedly, he greets his audience, saying, "Welcome, my additional fools. How was your day? I am the Demon King Vilto." He starts a new game called Boldy Spirit, and his enthusiasm quickly wins over his viewers. Later, Makina enters their home, and noticing Vilto's excitement, feels reassured that he's finding acceptance among his audience. She tells him she'll prepare dinner and wait for him, while Vilto decides to take a short walk around the city. During his stroll, he encounters someone he seems to recognize from his past. It's Graham. The story then flashes back over 500 years to when Graham was caring for his sick sister, promising to find healing herbs for her. Armed with a sword from his father to protect him from the monsters in the forest, Graham ventured into the woods, found some herbs, and, on his return, encountered a horde of lizard men from one of the 6 dark clans. Returning to the present, Graham sits with Vilto, and Vilto comments on how much better the food tastes now compared to his memories of the past. The scene begins with Graham, who expresses his disbelief, saying that he can't believe he's sitting next to the enemy who once killed his family and friends. Vilto responds calmly, admitting that he shares a similar feeling, having lost countless followers himself. He clarifies that he no longer harbors any anger or hatred, though he is curious about why Graham is still alive and what he's doing here. Graham explains that although he defeated Vilto, he didn't gain immortality. Instead, he received the blessing of eternal youth, which isn't the same as true immortality. After returning, he was banished from his homeland and ended up taking countless lives, both mortal and immortal. Graham confides that the world no longer has a place for a hero like him. He then questions Vilto's motives, asking why he sought to control the world. Vilto answers that he pursued control to bring peace to the world. He mentions that various elements, such as the phoenix and magic, grant immortality, noting that all immortals were once mortal. People called them the Dark Ones, yet they were fundamentally similar to mortals. Despite this, mortals feared, envied, and persecuted them. Vilto saw it as his duty to rise to the challenge to prevent such conflict among the weak, which is his version of peace. Graham disagrees with Vilto's justification, noting that they've known these things for over 500 years. With that, Graham thanks Vilto for the meal and leaves. The scene shifts to Vilto walking down the street. He overhears Takahashi arguing with someone who insists he needs double the payment if they're to face the Yakuza. The man warns that if Takahashi refuses, she'll have to find someone else, assuming anyone else is willing. Takahashi angrily retorts, calling him a brute and accusing him of cowardice. The man, enraged, nearly strikes her, but Vilto steps in just in time, grabbing his hand to protect Takahashi. Vilto demands that the giant step back, saying he'll overlook the disrespect this time. The giant, recognizing Vilto, taunts him by recalling how he once defeated him and threatens to kill him now. Takahashi urges Vilto to run, but Vilto insists that this is the perfect opportunity to test his strength, which he's gained from his 1 million subscribers. The giant throws a powerful punch, but Vilto easily blocks it and counters with a crushing blow, leaving the giant on the ground and unable to move. Takahashi, now relieved, thanks Vilto for saving her, explaining that the giant was supposed to be her bodyguard but constantly sabotaged her efforts. She says she has found a better bodyguard in Vilto and offers to pay him for the job. In a separate scene, Kinohara reports to her leader, stating that they completed the cleansing operation and the plan is progressing smoothly. She adds that they're close to creating a halo effect, and once ready, she'll head to the location herself. Her leader responds that he will join as well. Returning to Vilto and Takahashi, Vilto asks about her line of work. Takahashi reveals that she's involved in theft. Intrigued, Vilto suggests that all he needs to do is provide a distraction so she can steal safely. Thrilled by his quick understanding, Takahashi begins scouting the area. However, Vilto takes an unexpected approach, breaking down an iron wall and grabbing their target, throwing him to the ground with astonishing strength. Takahashi is left amazed by his power. Our episode begins with Takahashi observing the villains through an electronic screen. She zooms in on a box next to them and says, "This is the cube that must be stolen." She then says to the Demon King, "The first thought you didn't have a familia, yet you restored the ethereal connections of the familia using magic." We then see the villain leader ask Viltol, "Who are you, scoundrel?" Viltol tells them he is the Demon King, to which they respond, "Are you mocking us, man?" Viltol replies that he will use them as a test to restore his faith. One of the villains insults him, and Viltol says, "I do not tolerate insults." The leader pulls out a gun and fires at Viltol, but Viltol uses his magic to protect himself and defeats them all. Then Viltol grabs the gun, inserts a card into it, and Takahashi says to him, "Let's go steal the box." Suddenly, something strange happens around them, throwing Viltol back. A massive monster called Magino Gearforth, part of the city's special forces, appears before him. Takahashi is surprised, wondering how the gang leader has such a powerful creature personally. Viltol decides to face it, seeing this as an important test of his strength. He fires at the monster, and it prepares to attack, unleashing a series of powerful assaults. Viltol counters with a ray attack, saying, "I didn't think this would be enough to defeat such a monster." But suddenly the monster retaliates with an attack, which Viltol dodges. Vile comments, "With all my strength, I could have pierced through this easily. I suppose this is the limit of faith from 1,000,000 weak subscribers." Although he might lose those subscribers, he doesn't mind enjoying a little fun. He changes his clothes into those of the Demon King, and the monster also readies itself. The monster tells him, "This will be very bad for you, Vito," and the battle begins between them. The monster uses a family power to decapitate Viltol, thinking it has won. But Viltol's head, lying on the ground, speaks, "It's too early for that." His body moves toward his head, re-attaching it. Viltol then raises his sword, releasing immense power, and attacks the monster, severing its arms and legs, ultimately defeating it. He says, "That was an enjoyable battle. Now it's time to talk." The monster contacts its owner saying, "The target is alive, I couldn't defeat him, and I am unable to fight any longer, so I will execute code 8090. The scene shifts to Viltol holding the small cube, when Takahashi arrives and remarks that watching his fight with the monster was terrifying. Viltol responds, "I'm surprised that weapons can enhance a person's strength to this extent." What a frightening era. Takahashi adds that things are getting increasingly suspicious and mysterious, making her wonder if this mission was far riskier than she initially thought, and that it shouldn't be ignored so easily. Viltol then asks her about the cube, so Takahashi takes it and explains it's a data storage device made from mithril, and that her client wanted the files inside it. She opens the device and discovers data revealing a list of candidates. Viltol comments, "These are the servants, the long-lived ones." Takahashi tries to contact her client for more information but can't reach him as he rarely accepts calls from others. It seems they'll have to meet him in person. They arrive at a massive building where her client resides on the 13th floor. He's quite well known. Anyone involved in that kind of work in the city recognizes his name. They enter the building and reach the elevator, but Viltol stops Takahashi saying, "Let me press the button. I really like buttons." He presses it once, twice, 3 times. Takahashi explains he can't go directly to the 13th floor. He must first press the 2nd floor, then the 17th, and then the 13th, as it's linked to the security system. Finally, they arrive at the client's place. However, he's a cautious man who has traps set up everywhere, so they proceed carefully. But Viltol assures her there are no traps there, and that he can easily detect them with infrared rays. He scans the area thoroughly and finds nothing. Oddly, the door is open and there's a foul smell lingering. It seems no one is home. They enter the room and find him sitting in a chair, but as Takahashi approaches and moves the chair, she discovers he's dead. The Demon King, Viltol, steps closer, saying, "This face, I think I've seen it once before, though he wore shabby clothes back then." It seems he enjoyed disguises. Takahashi confirms, explaining that he used to gather information directly from the streets. Upon closer inspection, Viltol notices he was stabbed in the heart and neck by a blade just days ago. However, the murder wasn't out of hostility. It was a highly professional kill. Understanding this, Takahashi realizes he was likely killed by a skilled assassin or a professional with a vendetta. Viltol then asks if it was necessary to destroy his familia. Takahashi suggests it might have been incidental. If murder was the only goal, merely destroying the heart would have sufficed for any mortal. The true aim seems to have been to erase any information connected to his familia. Takahashi then considers that this may be related to a job she took on just a week before his death. She suggests that the list they found might be their only lead, but Viltol disagrees, indicating there's another option. Takahashi recalls that EGO, a well-known information broker and skilled etheric hacker, may have a role in this. Given that the familia is always connected to the network, hiding data there would be impractical. She concludes that EGO must have stored the information on a separate device. She accesses his computer, which surprisingly opens without requiring a password. But when she examines the files, she finds them all corrupted. Viltol asks her to analyze the file arrangement within the folders. Takahashi realizes it's a program matrix, and she notices something embedded in the files. A video of EGO appears where he speaks directly to the viewer, stating that if they're watching this, he is already dead. EGO then unveils a shocking truth. The prosperity of Shinjuku relies on a sinister power source. The city's core infrastructure is powered by an etheric reactor beneath it, which draws energy from innocent souls. The reactor feeds on etheric lines crisscrossing the land, sustained by the planet's core, converting this energy into both magic and electricity. To produce enough energy for a city the size of Shinjuku, the reactor would need to be placed over nearly 10 overlapping etheric lines. However, a geological survey conducted before Shinjuku's first war found only 2 etheric lines running beneath the reactor within the city. This discrepancy raises a critical question. How does Shinjuku maintain sufficient energy with only 2 etheric lines? Since electricity remains stable in colder regions, an alternative power source must be filling the gap. This led to the creation of the Eternal Furnace project. The furnace consumes immortals like firewood. It's a magical, ritual device that sacrifices souls to produce ether for the city. Because immortals are closer to higher spiritual beings, a single immortal soul yields as much ether as tens of thousands of mortal souls. The stronger the immortal, the more energy they produce. The data shows that low-income workers, the homeless and outsiders were gathered to construct the furnace, only to be killed. Those behind Essity view immortals as fuel, even referring to them as firewood. Through his research, EGO discovered that the first firewood fed to the furnace was Rainal, the Sword of Salvation, one of the 6 peers of darkness, and an ancient immortal. Hunts for immortals have been taking place worldwide. 3 months ago, while gathering information, EGO encountered an Ami assassin. Though he managed to escape, their tightened security hindered his progress. He managed to hire a hacker friend, who discovered that the Yakuza Guild planned to sell a list of immortal names to AT, likely because their stock of firewood was running low, and the Eternal Furnace was on the brink of failing. Shutting it down would be like stopping Shinjuku's heartbeat. EGO believed that the Eternal Furnace should not exist. He stored all the data he gathered on this personal computer. He leaves the decision in the viewer's hands, apologizing for the burden, though he believes that only the legendary Demon King, who once ruled over all immortals, could resolve such a crisis in this era. After the video ends, Takahashi reacts with, "This is unforgivable." Viltol asks her, should we release this information online? What would happen to Shinjuku's residents if the Eternal Furnace were shut down? He warns her that, like EGO, she might be killed and that all the data could be erased. He states that this issue concerns immortals and, as their ruler, it is his duty to act. "You don't need to worry. I will make all the decisions," she replies. She then suggests reporting the body to the city guards. Viltol replies, "I need to inform Makina about this," but something shocks him and the episode ends there. If you enjoyed the video, remember to subscribe and activate the bell to stay updated. While Valtol was out on an errand, Makina went to the fridge to figure out what to make for dinner. Unfortunately, it looked like the same old ingredients were still there. Alec, always the optimist, suggested that she could make a good curry with what she had. Just then, the doorbell rang. Makina went to answer it, but to her surprise and disgust, it was Marcus standing there. After everything he had done, Makina's response was instant. She unleashed a huge burst of fire, sending Marcus flying backward as he was engulfed in flames. But since Marcus was as immortal as Makina, the fire did little to stop him. Makina, now fully transformed, stepped outside, already knowing Marcus was up to something. Before the battle started, she disconnected her familia from the network to prevent Marcus from accessing it. Then the two of them began to fight, casting magic and using weapon attacks. For a while it seemed like the fight was evenly matched, but then while Marcus was distracted, Makina got close enough to grab his arm, making it explode and come off. But just a few moments later, Marcus regenerated his arm and launched a deadly sword rain attack that caused a massive explosion. Makina blocked the attack with her shield and was unharmed, but the house was another story. She had no fire insurance, so the damage was considerable. Then, just as she thought things couldn't get worse, Marcus's secretary appeared from the smoke, attempting a sneak attack. But Makina was quick, and the secretary only slashed through an illusion. Makina had expected Marcus to bring help, so she prepared a spell to destroy the secretary, but before she could complete it, Marcus shouted, "Codebreaker!" Suddenly, Makina's familia stopped working, leaving her disoriented. The secretary seized the opportunity and stabbed Makina through the chest. Makina collapsed, unable to get up. With the fight over, the secretary scolded Marcus for his recklessness, pointing out that Makina could have easily killed her earlier, and all of this could have been avoided if Marcus had just disabled Makina from the start. As the two stood over Makina's motionless body, Marcus smiled in satisfaction, enjoying seeing Makina in such a vulnerable state. Makina, glaring at him, asked what he had done to her. Marcus explained that he had shut down her familia. She had disconnected it before the fight, so she didn't think it would be possible for him to do that. But Marcus' familia was a special prototype, designed to be more advanced than the current systems. He had admin access to all the familias in the city and could disable any of them at will. This gave Marcus an undeniable advantage, and he believed this power made him the strongest. But Makina couldn't understand why he was so obsessed with being the strongest, as it seemed to offer him nothing. Marcus, however, had a plan. He wanted to become the new Demon Lord, not through brute force, but by controlling information and technology. With that, he would dominate the world in a way Valtol never could. Just then, the secretary reminded him that they were running late for his next appointment. Marcus decided to end things quickly, and he intended to use Makina as fuel for the immortal furnace. When Valtol and Takahashi returned home, they found the place destroyed, with no sign of Makina except for a scorched game controller. Valtol was devastated, unable to process what had happened. He was in shock, so Takahashi asked if he was okay. Realizing he needed to act, Valtol asked if there was any information about the incident. Social media reports were unclear, but people speculated an explosion had occurred. Valtol wished he could find a way to figure out where Makina was. Takahashi then suggested using drones. While security drones were scarce in the slums, there were many delivery drones with cameras. She hacked into their systems and found video footage of the battle. It showed Marcus and his secretary taking Makina to a restricted section of the city reactor. Takahashi confirmed that Marcus intended to use Makina's soul to power the city. Valtor thanked her for the information and started heading toward the reactor, but Takahashi warned him to think it through. The reactor was heavily guarded and Valtor would need help. Takahashi couldn't fight, so Valtor needed someone strong to help him. Valtor had few allies left, but one person came to mind. He went to meet with Graham, who initially refused to help. But when Veltal knelt before him and asked for help, Graham decided to at least hear him out. Veltal shared everything he had discovered about the city's ether reactor with Graham, and Graham, who had always suspected something was off with the project, was now horrified by the truth. The reactor, designed to burn the souls of people like Makina for power, was far worse than he could have imagined. Veltal pleaded with him to help storm the reactor. He knew he couldn't rescue Makina alone in his current state, but Graham's response wasn't one of sympathy. Instead, he was more frustrated than anything. Graham reminded Veltal of their bitter past. Veltal's subordinates had killed Graham's family, and Veltal himself had waged wars that resulted in the deaths of millions. Now, Veltal was bowing his head before his sworn enemy just to save one immortal woman. Graham found this utterly shameless. Though Graham didn't approve of the city being built on innocent lives lost, he was also aware that the reactor was the heart of the city. If it were destroyed, the city would fall into darkness, ruining the lives of millions. Graham questioned whether Veltal really intended to destroy the lives of so many just to save one person. Veltal laughed at the suggestion that he hadn't thought things through. He wasn't foolish enough to overlook the consequences, which was why he planned to both save Makina and fix the city's problems. However, he knew he didn't have the power or support to do that on his own. That's why he humbly asked his former enemy for help. The sincerity in his words made Graham stand up and agree to help. Though he made it clear he wasn't doing this for Veltal. He hadn't forgiven Veltal for the atrocities he committed centuries ago. But since there was a kidnapped woman whose soul was about to be burned, Graham agreed to temporarily team up with Veltal for the sake of justice. It felt strange, but they were now allies, however reluctantly. Afterward, Takahashi found a way for them to enter the reactor without going through the heavily guarded restricted areas. She led them to a hidden entrance, a route originally used for transporting materials to build the reactor. Although this path led to the reactor, Veltal was concerned they didn't have enough time to navigate it. Graham, on the other hand, wasn't worried at all. He had cleared many mazes in the past and thought this one would be a piece of cake. He cast a spell called auto-mapping, and within moments, a detailed map of the maze appeared in his hand. Veltal had never seen magic like this before, so Graham explained it was a unique spell he'd developed during his time as an adventurer. But this only frustrated Veltal. He had spent a lot of time and effort designing the dungeons back in the day, and now it turned out that Graham had been cheating his way through them. Veltal accused him of lacking pride as an adventurer, but Graham didn't care. To him, an adventurer's pride had nothing to do with getting through dungeons quickly, and he wasn't about to waste time on traps and tricks when he had a map. Takahashi, tired of their bickering, snapped at them to focus and take the mission seriously because they still had to rescue Makina. Realizing they had been acting childish, both Veltal and Graham apologized and promised to focus on the task at hand. With the map complete, they now had a clear path through the maze, saving precious time. Veltal asked Graham if the map could be trusted, and Graham reassured him that his spell could also detect traps and enemies. The maze didn't seem to have any security measures, so they could take the shortest path to the reactor without worry. As they moved forward, Veltal called Takahashi to apologize again for his earlier outburst. She was still annoyed, but said she would overlook it as long as he stayed focused. He then asked how her part of the plan was going, and she told him she was making progress, though it would take time to finish. She wasn't sure if she'd be done by the time they reached the reactor, so if she needed more time, Veltal and Graham would have to keep the enemies busy. As they descended deeper into the reactor's complex, the aether grew denser, and communication with Takahashi became more and more difficult. Before the connection cut off, she told Veltal that she would finish preparing what was needed. Veltal took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. Graham noticed the change in Veltal and commented that he could tell Veltal had grown stronger since their last meeting. Veltal was confused because he didn't feel stronger, but Graham wasn't talking about physical strength. He was referring to Veltal's character. In the past, Veltal would never have bowed his head to anyone, not even to save someone he cared about. But now he was willing to humble himself to save Machina. Graham thought that if Veltal had been like this when they fought years ago, the outcome might have been very different. As they arrived at their destination, Veltal and Graham were confronted by Marcus's secretary. She had been expecting them because Marcus had known Veltal would eventually come. Marcus greets Machina with a sinister good morning. She glares at him, calling him a rat for betraying their king. When Marcus sarcastically tries to be friendly, he admits that he investigated Veltal's resurrection and was proud to discover that Machina had survived and was helping the Demon King. When Machina asks where they are, Marcus reveals they are directly beneath the Aether reactor. He explains that the immortal furnace uses the souls of immortals as fuel to generate Aether, which powers the city. Machina remembers a note left by Ornard and Pomlock that hinted at this horrifying truth. She refuses to believe it, but Marcus confirms it and mockingly calls them excellent firewood. When Marcus teases the love Ornard and Pomlock showed each other until their end, Machina loses control and unleashes fire magic at him. Marcus shields himself and her restraints prevent her from fully transforming. He revels in her hatred, explaining that immortals truly die in the furnace, as their very souls are consumed to produce ether. He reveals that Xenol was the first immortal burned, followed by many others, and describes the pain Xenol endured. Machina vows to burn Marcus to ash, but he brushes off her threats, justifying the sacrifice of immortals as necessary for the city's prosperity. He adds that only a few know the truth, and he intends to keep it that way to avoid unrest over immortal rights. He confesses he personally came to capture her because she, as one of the 6 Dark Peers, could power the city long enough for them to find an alternative fuel source. Meanwhile, the assistant approaches Veltal and Graham, surprised that Marcus's prediction of Veltal infiltrating through the path was accurate. Her mission is to stop Veltal, but she hadn't expected him to bring Graham. She recognizes Graham as the ageless hero from the Second War, whose exploits are well documented. Graham tells Veltal to move ahead, promising to hold the assistant off. Veltal, confident in Graham's abilities, proceeds to Machina's location. The assistant, seeing them as relics of the past, attacks Graham, but is shocked when he blocks her strike. This allows Veltal to slip away. Determined to eliminate Graham quickly, she activates her Maginot gear, a next-generation prototype. The lightweight armor enhances her power and efficiency, but depends on her magic reserves for operation. Confident in her advanced technology, she mocks Graham for using outdated weapons. Graham counters that battles aren't always about having the latest tools. He observes that her exceptional speed comes from her lightning draw technique, which activates only during quick strikes. Despite her confidence, Graham keeps up with her attacks, surprising her with his skill. She tries to hack his familiar but fails, refusing to believe an outdated relic could defeat her. Graham gains the upper hand with an old fireball tactic, proving that experience and strategy can trump new technology. Frustrated, the assistant prepares a powerful attack. Graham unsheathes his glowing blade, preparing the same move he used to defeat the Demon King. Their final clash ends in a burst of light, leaving the assistant injured. Graham admits his blade didn't unleash its full power due to its long disuse, but he is still impressed by her Maginot gear, which protected her from worse damage. Confused by her loss, the assistant asks why she was defeated. Graham attributes his victory to 500 years of experience. Proud of his heroic act, he decides not to kill her, as she no longer poses a threat. His goal was to stop her from interfering with Veltal's rescue mission. Their conversation is interrupted when a unit of 4th-generation Minogear soldiers arrives, setting the stage for another confrontation. Veltal deflects the soldiers' attacks with his shield but notices the shots might also hit the assistant. Determined to protect her, he engages the unit. Meanwhile, Marcus holds Machina over the immortal furnace, ready to drop her in. He wonders if her fire-based soul will burn even brighter as fuel. Dreaming of eradicating all immortals to become the true demon lord, he bids her farewell and lets go. As Machina falls, she hopes Veltel can live a meaningful life without her and confesses her love for him. Just before she hits the furnace, Veltel swoops in, saving her at the last moment. He teases her for giving up so easily and apologizes for being late. She tears up as he reassures her he's here to save her, just as he did once before. Setting her down gently, he promises to finish this quickly so they can return home. Marcus is enraged by Veltel's interference, but grudgingly acknowledges his growing power and popularity. He sarcastically complains about Veltel spending his time gaming while refusing to explain his betrayal. Veltel offers Marcus one last chance to abandon his treachery and rejoin the Immortals, but Marcus declines. Preparing for battle, Veltel summons his weapon, ready to punish Marcus for his crimes. Marcus launches blood daggers at Veltel, which are deflected. He detonates the daggers, but Veltel withstands the blasts using enhancement magic. The two clash intensely, but Marcus pins Veltel to the ground, reveling in the sight. Veltel vows to make him pay for his atrocities, but Marcus, confident in his regenerative abilities, mocks him as a relic of the past. Their battle escalates until Veltel shatters Marcus's blade and decapitates him. Marcus quickly regenerates his head, smugly pointing out that Veltel can't defeat him without a familia. He uses his blood to trigger devastating explosions, severely wounding Veltel. Just as Marcus prepares a final attack, Veltel congratulates him on being the second person, after Graham, to push him this far. Sensing a surge of power from Veltel, Marcus grows uneasy. Veltel offers him one last chance to surrender, but Marcus, consumed by pride, refuses. As Marcus attacks again, Veltel transforms into his second form, a dark dragon wielding a sword. The transformation is powered by the ether-rich environment and the faith of his newfound followers, amplified by Takahashi broadcasting his live stream across the city. Stunned, Marcus realizes Veltel can now cast spells without incantations. Veltel explains that his second form replicates the functions of a familia, allowing him to wield magic with sheer willpower. He commends Marcus's advancements in magitech, but warns that they forced him to evolve. Marcus falls into despair when his spells fail. Veltel torments him, repeatedly killing and reviving him with magic, and even infiltrates Marcus's mind to show horrifying visions. Terrified, Marcus begs for mercy, but Veltel reminds him of his betrayal and stabs him with his blade. Dragging Marcus to the reactor, Veltel remarks that it's fitting for him to become the same fuel he used to destroy others. Ignoring Marcus's final failed attack, Veltel drops him into the furnace, where he disintegrates. The reactor resets, glowing brightly, and Machina's restraints shatter. Returning to his normal form, Veltel reassures Machina, who admits his transformation frightened her. She adds that such power suits the Demon Lord. Veltel, having gained a new perspective on life, confesses his love for her, and she does the same. They embrace, their bond stronger than ever. Elsewhere, Graham is shown victorious, standing atop the destroyed robots. Veltel and Machina reunite with Takahashi, who is overjoyed to see them safe. The assistant, having survived her fight with Graham, teams up with him to face future challenges. With Marcus gone, IHMI announces a new director. Veltel and Machina move into Eggio's apartment, quickly making it their own. Veltel transforms Eggio's office into a gaming room, where his silver and gold YouTube plaques proudly sit. The episode ends with the couple enjoying a peaceful meal, ready to face whatever comes next. After an intense 74-hour stream, Veltel finally defeats the final boss of the game. The victory is impressive, but he humbly admits he still doesn't measure up to Kai. Machina, watching the entire time, gets teary-eyed when Veltel thanks his viewers and logs off. She praises him for beating such a notoriously challenging game, but can't help worrying about his health. She gently suggests he take breaks every 24 hours during future streams, not only for his well-being, but also because she misses him during those long gaming marathons. Veltal promises to consider her advice and shares exciting news. His channel has just hit 3 million subscribers. Overjoyed, Makina suggests they celebrate with homemade food or a sushi outing. However, Veltal shrugs it off, saying there's no need. Instead, he reveals something extraordinary. He has unlocked the second form of his dark sword. Despite its power, he hesitates to use it, as it reminds him of Graham's legendary weapon. As Makina sits down, Veltal shifts the conversation to his next mission, finding the remaining 6 dark peers. He believes Marcus only captured Xenon, reasoning that Marcus would have bragged if he'd defeated more. Yet the whereabouts of Ralsheen, Silwald, and Mai remain a mystery. Makina admits she had tracked all the dark peers before the chaos of the immortal hunt scattered them. When Veltal asks for her help, she agrees, suggesting they start with the Dark Peer Records, a magical book that logs the actions and locations of the 6 members. Unfortunately, it was lost after the war. While the loss is frustrating, Makina notes it also kept Marcus from exploiting it. Their discussion is interrupted when Takahashi visits. Veltal is shocked to learn she's still in high school despite her dangerous work. He voices concern, but Takahashi brushes it off, saying she has her priorities. Switching gears, Takahashi congratulates Veltal on his stream, assuring him that viewers often use long streams as background noise. She even suggests editing highlights for those who missed it. Makina proudly reveals she's already prepared those clips. When Takahashi senses they're hiding something, she insists on being included. Reluctantly, Veltal explains their search for the Dark Peer Records, calling it a lost magical treasure. Takahashi, thrilled by the challenge, declares that as a hacker, this mission is right up her alley. Though hesitant to involve a human in immortal affairs, Veltal acknowledges her skills and allows her to join. Takahashi begins her search online, but Makina doubts they'll find anything so easily. Takahashi explains she's not looking for the artifact itself, but for locations it might be hidden, places like museums or research facilities. After some digging, Takahashi uncovers a lead, the Lucille School of Magic in Akihabara. The school, founded after the Immortal War, is rumored to have a sealed vault that hasn't been opened in nearly 500 years. Veltal notes that timeline matches the artifact's disappearance. While Takahashi suggests daring infiltration methods, Veltal proposes a simpler plan. They enroll as students to gain access. The group agrees, with Takahashi using her skills to forge an exchange program application. Their journey takes them to Akihabara City, where Veltal marvels at the remnants of Alnith's ancient civilization thriving in a modern setting. He's particularly fascinated by the Magi prostheses, advanced magical tools on display throughout the vibrant city. In Akihabara, Takahashi explains that the city is famous for its advanced prosthetics. Veltal is astonished to see how many people have replaced large parts of their bodies with machine enhancements, marveling at how technology and magic coexist here. After exploring the city, the trio dons their new uniforms, preparing for their first day at Lucille School of Magic. They are introduced to Trady Gothel, the chairwoman of the school and head of the Gothel clan, one of the 3 great families that have ruled for 5 centuries. Takahashi is shocked their forged application was accepted, believing Trady would see through the deception. Her surprise grows when Veltal boldly reveals their goal, to open the school's legendary treasury. Instead of rejecting them, Trady, impressed by Veltal's determination, grants them permission to try. She explains that the vault has been sealed for over 500 years, and opening it requires 3 magical artifacts known as the Regalia. Each clan possesses one: the Gothel clan's blade, the Seaborn clan's crown, and the Reynard clan's orb. However, the Reynard orb has been missing for centuries. She displays the Gothel blade, a symbol of her clan's power, before concluding their meeting. After orientation, their teacher, Mag, leads them to their classroom. Meanwhile, a student named Hazuki sits alone in class, overhearing whispers from her peers mocking her as a failure. Disheartened, she mutters about how dull her life has become. A mysterious voice suddenly whispers an apology to her, but she dismisses it, resigned to her loneliness. As Mag walks the new students into class, she explains an important rule. Students must remove any familia, artificial spirits, or technological enhancements. Takahashi bristles at this restriction, but Mag insists it's necessary. She explains that relying on such tools limits a sorcerer's true potential. Mag introduces the newcomers. Veltol's charismatic and bold introduction immediately captures Hazuki's attention. The other girls follow with their greetings, each bringing their unique charm to the group. Finally, Mag brings out a device to measure their magical abilities. When it's Veltol's turn, he warns her that the machine won't survive the test. Skeptical, Mag dismisses his claim, until he places his hands on the device and it shatters into pieces, leaving the entire class stunned. Hazuki stares at him, awestruck, as the episode ends with this shocking display of power. The next day at school, the teacher had an unusual class. She talked about a struggling student, an exchange student, and somehow ended up connecting magic with chemistry. Just as everyone started to zone out, she noticed Velto staring off into space. Calling him out, she asked why he wasn't paying attention. Velto, ever the cool guy, said, "I already know it all." Naturally, the teacher wasn't buying it, so she tested him. "All right, Velto, tell us about the disaster in 722 AD and the wizard railroad from Rostand, who went crazy after being possessed by a summoned hero's spirit." Without missing a beat, Velto explained the whole story perfectly, like he had been there himself. The class was stunned. One kid even whispered, "Does he time travel or something?" Later, during lunch, Velto's friend Makina was enjoying her meal when a strange boy with goat-like ears walked up to her. This boy, Albert, had a lot to say about Velto. He tossed around insults until Makina, clearly annoyed, warned him to back off. That's when Velto showed up, casually calling Albert Big Ears. Albert fired back, introducing himself as Albert Hegram, eldest son of the Hegram family, expecting Velto to be impressed. Velto wasn't. In fact, he doubled down, saying Albert's grandfather had literally shaken in his boots during the Battle of Stanbold. Furious, Albert accused Velto of lying and challenged him to a duel. Fast forward to the next day and we're in the combat arena. Hajiki, a student with no magical powers, was sitting nervously on the sidelines. Her friends Makina and Takahashi tried cheering her up, suggesting she join a magic school. Meanwhile, their teacher, Maggie, showed up to referee the duel between Velto and Albert. Velto was all confidence, even promising Hajiki that he'd win the duel in no time. Albert, on the other hand, was bragging about being top tier in magic rankings. Velto then raised the stakes, making a bet. If he lost or moved a single step during the duel, he'd follow Albert's every command. But if he won without moving, Albert would have to leave Hajiki alone. Albert agreed, swearing a noble vow, while Hajiki fumed in the background. Makina calmed her down, saying, "Relax, it's Velto, he's got this." The duel began and Albert cast a spell. Velto smirked, mocking how weak it was. Albert, frustrated, prepared his most powerful magic despite warnings from Majoro, the announcer, about how dangerous it was. Velto encouraged him, saying, "Go ahead, consider this your lesson." Takahashi, watching from the sidelines, couldn't help but notice how much Velto was enjoying himself. After all, it's been ages since he had a good old-fashioned magic duel. Albert unleashed his ultimate spell with all his might, aiming it directly at Velto. The crowd was left speechless. But Velto? He casually caught it with his bare hand like it was a beach ball. Turning to Albert, Velto said, "Not bad, but give it another 200 years of practice and you might actually impress me." He even gave Albert some credit, saying his mana and ether manipulation were pretty solid for a human in this era. Definitely the result of hard work. Then, Velto offered Albert a reward for his effort, and by reward, he meant showing him the true essence of magic. With a flick of his hand, Velto sent a spell Albert's way. Hijiki, watching from the sidelines, was confused. What did Velto just do, she asked. Makina explained that Velto had compressed a massive amount of mana and let Albert feel its power. Basically, a VIP magic experience. Hijiki wasn't buying it, but he's just a human, she argued. Mashuro, the announcer, then declared Velto the winner of the duel. Afterward, Velto walked up to Hijiki and said he dedicated his win to her. Hijiki, still angry, grudgingly thanked him, but warned him to stay out of her business before storming off. The group then turned their attention to the bigger mission. Makina jokingly offered to let Takahashi head home alone, but he refused, saying they still had to hunt for the treasure. They needed 3 special badges to unlock a chest, but Takahashi groaned about the constant obstacles. Blithold explained why they couldn't just magic their way in. Ancient seals were designed to destroy the contents if tampered with. Great, Takashi muttered. More puzzles. Makina stressed the importance of finding the ornaments carefully. Riltal chimed in, saying only 2 ornaments remained to be found. Unfortunately, the orb, the last piece, had gone missing, leaving them with no leads. Takahashi had a hunch. Are we talking about Hazuki? Riltal confirmed it, explaining she was the head of the Renard House, once one of the great houses. Their fall from grace was tied to losing the orb, their family's symbol of power. Takahashi couldn't help but speculate. Maybe Viltal's duel with Albert was part of some master plan to get on Hazuki's good side. Viltal never admitted it, but Takahashi noted that Viltal always found a way to help her, despite his grumbling. Later, the group arrived in a seedy part of town, Velto called the Land of Lust and Vanity, a darker version of Akihabara known as the Electric City. Its maze-like streets were packed with shady deals and questionable characters. Velto, however, looked thrilled, seeing it as the perfect place to gather intel. Takahashi warned them, "One wrong turn here, and we'll spend a whole day finding our way back." They decided to hire a guide, and Makina, ever confident, volunteered to lead. The group ended up at a maid cafe. Takahashi requested a table for 3, but Velto was skeptical. "How exactly is this a good place for intelligence gathering?" he asked. Makina waved him off, saying maid cafes were hot spots for all kinds of info. As they settled in, Makina grumbled about the outrageous prices. Takahashi shrugged, calling it the cost of chasing dreams. Akina scoffed, saying she'd grown up with maids and didn't need to pay for the experience. She reminisced about the maids from her past, noting they had a different vibe entirely. Then Velto brought up something Hazuki had said, and Makina guessed it was about Hazuki asking them to keep their distance. The group debated whether they should press her for answers or stay on her good side, ultimately deciding to tread carefully. She didn't seem like a bad person, after all. At that moment, the server arrived at their table and froze. It was Hazuki herself. And just like that, the episode ended with a shocking twist. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to catch what happens next, because if Hazuki's your server, you know things are about to get interesting. The trio stares at her, and their confusion quickly turns into excitement as they start complimenting her on how good she looks. But things take a turn when Veltel calls her by the wrong name. She gets annoyed, but he reminds her that he's still a customer, so she has to deal with it. Izuki, trying to keep it professional, calls him master and asks what he wants to order. Veltel wants a special omelet, but with a twist. He wants a song and dance with it. Izuki takes this as a challenge, and you can just see her attitude shift as she decides to prove herself. She nails the song and dance while writing Veltel's name on the omelet, looking like a total pro. Veltel loves the dish and praises her, telling her she can relax now since the cafe's closed. She sits down and takes a sip of Takahashi's drink, which annoys him, but hey, it's too late now. Then Veltel drops the bomb. He confirms that Hazuki is the head of the Reinhardt clan, and he needs her regalia to rule the world. He tells her his plan to open the school treasury, which Hazuki shoots down immediately, but Veltel's already dead serious about it, revealing that her family's artifact is missing. He got this info from Trat. and Hazuki admits that her family's downfall is tied to this very artifact. She's now just a poor student, scraping by with a part-time maid job. Takahashi's curious about the regalia, so she explains it's the ultimate symbol of kingship. The goddess Meldia gave it to Graham after he beat the Demon Lord, but the incompetent king at the time exiled Graham. The regalia got passed down, eventually ending up with the three gray houses, who couldn't get along, causing wars. Now, they have a parliamentary system in Akihabara, but the seal on the regalia hasn't been broken for 500 years. Izuki's honestly relieved that her orb is missing, though. Veltel asks her to set up a meeting with Cornelia, the head of the Seabird clan, and she agrees since they helped her out at school. The hacker's thrilled that she's willing to help, but Hazuki's stomach rumbles, so they decide to grab some food. The locals are curious about the Magic Town students, wondering what they're up to. Makina's impressed by how much Hazuki can eat, but the hacker's more impressed by how she got a meeting with Cornelia on such short notice. The topic shifts to the food in front of them, and Veltel and Meichina hesitate to eat one dish because it's dragon meat. Out of respect for the Demon Lord's vassal, they don't want to eat it, but Hazuki calls them out for being afraid, so they end up trying it. And they love it. Just when things are starting to settle, some cops show up and try to cause trouble, but they're saved by Trad, who's in the area meeting Meg. The headmistress asks for some privacy to talk to Hazuki, so they all head to a nearby meat stall for a more private chat. Trad offers Hazuki the chance to be adopted, but she's not buying it. She points out that Trad, being a noble, would get totally shunned by everyone else if she did that. Hazuki also feels it's her responsibility as the leader of the Reinhardt clan to protect it, and she can't just throw away her parents' legacy. Trad insists she's been Hazuki's ally from the start, and while Hazuki knows that, she still turns her down, thanking Trad for everything. Later, Hazuki has another moment where she hears a voice, and Takahashi notices she's not looking too well. But Hazuki reassures her that she's fine, even though she clearly isn't. She heads off alone with Veltel to meet Cornelia, where they're greeted by his assistant Meryl. He scans them for weapons before they're allowed inside. After introductions, Veltel is surprised to find out that Cornelia is a goblin. He thought all the big noble houses were made of elven blood, but Cornelia doesn't care about that. He actually finds it kind of amusing, saying he worked hard to get where he is, and despite not having Luzel's blood, he's the leader now. Veltel, not wasting any time, brings up the regalia. Cornelia immediately summons the crown and explains that the regalia is a part of Meldia's soul, but it can be stored in the owner's soul. It can only be retrieved if the owner decides to give it up, or, well, if they get eliminated. Veltel jokes about just ending the clan leader right there to get it, but Seabird doesn't seem too fazed by that. Cornelia is intrigued by Veltel and tells him that gathering the regalia isn't just about getting powerful objects. It's about becoming the true king of the city. Veltel quickly guesses that the whole point of collecting these artifacts is also a ritual to summon the so-called goddess. Seabird's pretty sure Trad knows that getting the regalia is the fastest way to push his ideology forward. He tells everyone except Veltel to leave the room, and once alone, he lets the Demon Lord know that the orb is somewhere nearby. He's not sure where exactly, but the owners of the regalia can sense each other if they're in the city. He thinks Trad probably feels it too. Seabird then gets a bit serious, saying that Hazuki is actually pretty vulnerable despite her tough exterior. He wants Veltel to help her out, to free her from the city's constraints. Apparently, he owes Hazuki's late father a big debt, one he couldn't pay back before he died. The least he can do is look out for her now. Veltel listens carefully, and Seabird reveals that Hazuki is the key to finding the missing regalia. Meanwhile, Makina's off buying a book she wrote about the Demon Lord, classic, but she hides it from the hackers when they try to snoop. The conversation shifts to one of the Dark Peers, May, and how Makina was close with her. Eventually, Veltel and Hazuki join them, and the Demon Lord shares that he got Seabird to agree to let them use the crown. They all decide to have a sleepover at Hazuki's mansion to celebrate, or maybe just to keep plotting. Who knows? Hazuki sets the tone for the evening by quietly placing down a family photo as everyone gets settled. Food is prepared, and Takahashi starts rambling in a toast. But Veltel, the Demon Lord, isn't here for long speeches and cuts her off mid-sentence. Glasses clink, and the crew kicks off their night with a celebratory drink. Takahashi, still reeling from learning that Hazuki has a side gig, reminds her that part-time work is against school policy and warns her to keep it under wraps. Meanwhile, Hazuki compliments Makina's cooking as she's handed a plate of food. But things get awkward when Makina casually mentions she's been living alone for decades, sharpening her cooking skills. Hazuki, puzzled by the glaring age gap, starts to ask questions, but Takahashi deflects, suggesting a fighting game tournament to avoid further interrogation. Veltel, ever the gamer, can't refuse the challenge. Hazuki smells something fishy with the sudden topic change, but Veltel misreads her doubt as fear and calls her out. Hazuki, not one to back down, accepts the challenge and proceeds to annihilate him in their first match. The group continues playing, and before long, Makina and Takahashi are knocked out. While they sleep, Veltel decides it's time for a bath. Unaware, Hazuki heads to the bathroom at the same time, walking in on the Demon Lord mid-soak. Veltel, because he's a Demon Lord and apparently full of himself, assumes she came to ogle his majestic figure. Hazuki, not one to be mocked, jumps into the bath to prove a point. As they soak, Veltel comments on the family regalia Hazuki inherited, wondering if that's why he's taken a special interest in her. She assures him it's not the case, and instead credits his actions to following his heart and doing what's right. He adds that their shared meals and moments have made them friends. Veltel's unexpected kindness melts the tension. He praises Hazuki for honoring her parents and protecting her clan, and she softens, admitting she's enjoyed spending time with the group. The conversation turns personal when Veltel asks about the photos she placed earlier, suspecting it was of her family. Hazuki finally opens up about her past. She shares how, as a child, she was always cheerful despite being seen as a cursed child, because her father came from Electric Town and her mother from Magic Town, a union the public couldn't stand. On her birthday, tragedy struck. The family was attacked and her parents were killed. She survived, but only narrowly, with an eye injury. At their funeral, she overheard Tart and Cornea discussing her regalia inheritance, realizing it made her a target. They vowed to protect her in honor of her parents' sacrifice. Now living in Akihabara as a noble, Hazuki keeps everyone at a distance, believing she's cursed to bring pain to those who get close to her. Veltel thanks her for sharing and promises not to blame her for anything that might happen because of their bond. As they head back inside, he cheekily tells her to cherish the memory of sharing a bath with him for the rest of her life. But their night takes a sharp turn when Veltel suddenly halts, sensing danger. A projection appears before them, a figure calling themselves Faceless. They demand that Veltel and his party leave the city immediately. Faceless reveals that Marcus, whom Veltel defeated earlier, was part of their organization, marking Veltel as a threat. They promise no harm if he complies, and even offers to handle the treasury beneath the school. Veltel flatly refuses. Faceless warns that the city will soon change and vanish. Hazuki, pale and trembling, recognizes the figure. It's the very person who attacked her family. Tart decides it's time to visit Cornea for a little one-on-one, except it's not for tea. When Cornea lets his guard down, Tart ends his life and takes the crown. Meanwhile, chaos erupts as news spreads that Mag has supposedly died in an explosion. As everyone debates the truth of this, breaking news drops. Cornea is dead and Tart has been pinned as the culprit. Naturally, this throws the city into a frenzy, triggering a Stage 2 emergency, as tensions between Magic Town and Electric Town skyrocket. At school, all students are ordered to the practice hall for safety, but Hazuki makes her way to the principal's office instead. There, she encounters Tart, or so she thinks. The principal's odd behavior toward Tart sets off alarms in Hazuki's head. When they're alone, Tart drops the act, revealing herself to be Mag. She explains that her mission from the guild is to collect all three regalia, and details her plan. She lured Tart to the mechanical clinic, switched bodies with her, and killed the principal in the explosion. Using Tart's body, she then assassinated Cornea. Mag lays it all out, including her twisted need for Hazuki to summon Meldia, the so-called goddess. Turns out Meldia has been using Hazuki as her vessel, which explains the voice in her head. Mag reveals that during the attack on Hazuki's family, Meldia manifested to protect her, but in doing so, drained Hazuki's mana. That's why her power is perpetually low. She's been unknowingly using it to seal Meldia. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, Mag drops another bomb. She killed Hazuki's parents and the doctor who treated her eye injury. When her mother requested the doctor implant a magical orb in her damaged eye, Mag saw it as the perfect opportunity to further her twisted agenda. Meanwhile, the students in the practice hall are taken hostage by Mag's accomplice. Thankfully, Takahashi hacks the area's lights, creating an opening for Veltel, Albert, and Makina to free the students and take down the controller. While they handle the ground situation, Veltel heads to the rooftop to confront Mag. By the time Velzia arrives, Meld has forced Hazuki to manifest the other two regalia. Satisfied with the chaos she's created, Meld leaves, smug as ever. But the ritual reaches its climax when blood from Hazuki's eye activates the spell, summoning Meldia in her full form. Meldia wastes no time asserting dominance, pointing her blade at Velzia and making it clear that Hazuki is no longer in control. As tensions between Magic Town and Electric Town boil over, Graham sits on a rooftop, casually watching the chaos unfold. Kinohara is shocked at the hero's apathy, but Graham's attention shifts when he notices the massive magic energy emanating from Meldia's summoning. On the rooftop, Meldia and Veltia finally meet face to face. Their interaction is less dramatic reunion and more petty roast battle as they comment on how far the other has fallen in power. Meldia attacks first, sending Veltia flying. Though he recovers thanks to his absurdly high subscriber count, the fight isn't going his way. Meldia is manipulating fate itself, ensuring her attacks hit and Veltia miss. Things get worse when she slices off one of Veltil's arms, and it doesn't regenerate because her powers are suppressing his immortality. She's also been using this manipulation to keep Graham ageless, adding another layer of her meddling. The mention of Graham shakes Meltild's resolve as she apologizes repeatedly, revealing all she ever wanted was for the hero to find happiness. This mental slip gives Hazuki a brief moment of control, during which she pleads with Veltel to save her. Meanwhile, Mag's accomplice, presumed dead, is duking it out with Makina. As they clash, Makina senses something familiar about the masked attacker. The mystery deepens when Makina lands a brutal blow, using her natural ketchup, blood obviously, to create a bomb that takes the attacker's head clean off. But, surprise, the attacker regenerates like an immortal and reveals herself to be Mei, one of the 6 Dark Peers. However, Mei doesn't seem to remember her past life. Being confronted by Makina causes Mei to briefly lose control of her powers, setting up yet another layer of chaos for the group to deal with. Mag, in full panic mode, jumps into the fight and knocks Makina out cold. Why? Because if she loses Mei on top of botching her mission, the higher-ups in her organization will send her straight to an early retirement. Not wanting to stick around, Mag teleports out of there with Mei in tow. Meanwhile, Veltel is still locked in a losing battle against Meldia. He's taking hit after hit, but notices something peculiar. Meldia always dodges his magic-charged attacks. It clicks. If he can land one, it'll actually hurt her. With that insight, the Demon Lord shifts his strategy. At the same time, Veldel figures out the goddess's Achilles heel, Graham. Turns out, Meldia is head over heels for the guy. She manifested into the world to figure out if Graham hates her for cursing him with eternal youth. Veldel, ever the smooth talker, points out that he knows how Graham feels and throws in a jab about her hijacking Hazuki's body, which he won't stand for. This sends Meldia spiraling into another mental breakdown. But her obsession with Graham pulls her back from the edge, and she refocuses on eliminating Veltel. Fueled by her misguided romantic devotion, she charges at him. Veltel, ready for the final round, activates the second stage of his sword and strikes a stance identical to Graham's. The sight freezes Meldia in her tracks, her resolve shaken. Unfortunately, Mag had set up a nasty failsafe in the summoning ritual. It activates, causing Meldia to lose control and transform into a terrifying, rage-fueled red version of herself. She lands a devastating blow, sending Veltel flying, but Graham steps in, using a shield to stop him from crashing. Veltel seizes the moment, asking Graham to cover him so he can save Hazuki. Though Graham doesn't initially recognize that Meldia is the one they're fighting, he agrees and defends against her attacks long enough to launch Veltel at her like a missile. Veltel strikes true, impaling Meldia with his soul-splitting sword. As she fades, Meldia apologizes for everything, her regrets pouring out. Veldi reassures her, saying it's all okay. He even lets her know that Graham doesn't resent her, bringing her some peace. With that, Hazuki regains control of her body, just as Takahashi checks in to confirm everyone's safety. As the dust settles, Takahashi updates Veltel on the broader situation. Veltel, determined to prevent an all-out war, takes action. He lands with Hazuki and declares her the new ruler of Akihabara. Hazuki proves her claim by presenting all 3 regalia, but the crowd isn't having it. Both sides reject her because of her mixed heritage, parents from both Magic Town and Electric Town. Before Hazuki can falter under the pressure, Veltel gives her a supportive nudge. With renewed confidence, she addresses the crowd, explaining the truth behind recent events. Her first decree as king, she abolishes the authority of the regalia altogether and transfers power to the Akihabara City Council. When the residents try to whine, she shuts them down with a firm, "Figure it out yourselves." With the immediate crisis resolved, the group heads to the vault, where the Immortals retrieve the Dark Peer's records. Back at home, they confirm that both Silwald and Mei are still alive. Hazuki and Takahashi later join the group, and it's revealed that Hazuki has transferred to a new school, where she's finally finding some happiness. To celebrate, they throw a party, complete with games and food. During the festivities, Meldia and Hazuki thank Veltel again for everything he's done. Outside, a giant billboard lights up, showing one of Veltel's streams, because of course, the Demon Lord is now an internet sensation. And with that, the season wraps up, leaving us with battles, betrayals, heartfelt moments, and a Demon Lord who's not just a legend, but also a rising digital superstar.